Meet Simon McLaughlin, a biodynamic farmer from the hills of Victoria. I've known Simon for quite a while now, and he's a pretty smart bloke. So if he's farming biodynamically, there must be something behind it. Simon, how are you, mate? Been a long time, mate.
How are you, Tim?
Yeah, I'm really good, really good. Nice to catch up with you again. Now, you and I worked years ago in a school, of all places.
2006, I think.
Oh, it's just dating us, isn't it? Yeah. But before that, you were actually a conventional farmer up in Queensland that switched over to biodynamics.
That's correct, yeah.
Because you noticed that you kept getting soil carbon tests as part of your management program, and you noticed that your soil carbon was, if anything, declining a little bit or staying low.
Yeah.
And you wanted to fix that. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, we were a conventional avocado farm. It was subtropical fruit, so just north of Brisbane. Following the directive of the time of the department, the Queensland DPI.
So you used the recipe book, as it were?
It was literally a book. And quite conventional thinking. And once I was a part of that system after school and some uni, started to look at the system a bit and go, why are we doing this and why are we doing that? And sort of started to ask questions of that system. And in doing that, looked more towards natural systems and from that, looking at soil health, soil biology, not just mineral inputs and outputs.
Well, I suppose I'm very similar. I was educated to use traditional farming methods and used traditional farming methods when I was managing farms. Yeah. But then I moved into education and I discovered all of the impacts of chemicals on the human body. Yeah. And I did a lot of research on that. And so that's bringing me to think of ways that we can maybe not abandon chemicals, but certainly use them a lot more sensibly. Yeah. And maybe use our soil a little bit better. Yeah. So you've got some ideas around that.
Yeah. And going back to that time, that point of change, which is an important time of changing. Yeah. Was coming out of uni. It was ag college. I sort of majored in integrated pest management. So that was looking at monitoring, like I'll break it down, looking at monitoring.
Using beneficials.
Not just spraying, because we were calendar spraying every 2 weeks, this and that. Yes. So I came home and I thought, well, I'm actually going to go out and see if there's any pests out there. So I started scouting, identifying hotspots and just spraying those. Yep. And from there you could see the changes, like number one, saving the cost of the chemicals. Yep. Number two, I hated spraying chemicals because exposure, it's not a nice thing to do for me. So it was ticking, all those sort of boxes. But then seeing the life come back into the orchard too was noticeable.
And then you went and took it one step further and you started going out at midnight planting cow horns or something?
I stumbled across biodynamics. It was a stumble. I suppose I was looking at those natural systems and then came to organic agriculture. Yep. That's initially. Yep. And it was actually, to be honest with you, on Landline back in the late 90s, they had a week or two on organic agriculture.
And so that's what captured you?
Yeah, but there was one section in there about biodynamics and an excerpt from A Winter's Tale by Alex Podolinsky, just a 5 or 10 minute grab. Yep. And something
triggered.
Yeah, something resonated with me and I wanted to look into it further. So that's where the spark came from.
Bloody Landline.
and then there was a point where I said, well, this is the way I'm going to do things, and took the leap.
And now you've moved down to Victoria with your beautiful wife. You've got your kids here. Yeah. And you've bought a property of your own. Yeah. And you're doing all biodynamic. Yeah. So before I left Queensland, I actually got to a point where I was certified biodynamic. So I'd made the transition from chemical or conventional farmer to certified biodynamic over a period of years before I left. And then for various reasons moved down to Victoria, did some work outside of horticulture and farming. Which is where we met.
Where we met, through education. And then came back to, as a passion of mine, to be involved with horticulture. So for other reasons as well, we moved to the Yarra Valley. Yeah. And I got involved in the viticultural industry and again, searching towards biodynamics, but started with...
And you got in with a vineyard that was actually using biodynamic principles to try and reduce costs and increase quality.
Yeah, and but more so focus on soil health. So compost tea making, compost making with the waste, soil health, soil biology, that as a real focus.
That's what I'm really getting into.
Yeah.
That's what I'm really interested in.
Yeah.
Can you take us through a little bit of this? Like there's a 501 and there's a 500 and could you take us through the very short basics of how you use that stuff, and then maybe we can go and have a look at the farm and see what the benefits are?
Yeah, and then I can kind of explain how I might use that in that context as well.
That's awesome, mate.
Yeah. So, there are different biodynamic preparations.
Yep.
Based on different ingredients or inputs.
Yep.
The main preparation for biodynamics is 500.
Yep.
Which is cow manure that's been packed in a cow horn and buried over over winter.
Yep. So we're growing bacteria and we're feeding the soil.
Yeah. So that's full of that's why it's called 500.
Yep.
They isolated 500 million bacteria in a gram of this stuff. That's where the name sort of came from originally. Okay, Tim. So I've just grabbed some 500 preparation 500 from my storage box. This substance I have here, you can see it's moist, colloidal, so like compost or humus. And that substance 6 months ago was fresh cow manure. It was placed in a cow horn and buried under the earth during winter. So transforms from that fresh cow manure to this substance.
So basically what you're doing when you're burying this stuff in a cow horn is you're putting it in a porous container in the soil and breeding up the natural bacteria that's in the manure already, plus the bacteria that's in the soil in a really concentrated form.
Yeah, if you look at it from a practical point of view, that's what that is.
And it smells pretty good.
Yeah, it's neutral. It's earthy, if you had a really good compost.
Yep.
It has that sort of neutral, earthy smell. It's a bit hard to explain, but it's a sweet. I call it a sweet.
It is a sweet smell.
An earthy smell, but it's 100% colloid, and that. Yeah. You
put this out twice a year.
Yeah, I do it in autumn.
Yep.
And in spring, so soon.
Sprayed directly on the ground.
Yeah.
And you've got to get your soil temperatures right because obviously you're dealing with a living organism.
Correct.
And so you've got to, like if you're making bread or making wine or anything, you've got to get your temperature right or it won't take.
Yeah, so the biology in this, we activate that in a way or multiply that by stirring it in a particular way. From a practical point of view, it's an inoculum.
Yep.
And this amount here, so that amount that I've got in my hand, give you an idea, in 35 litres of water, I can cover a hectare of land.
So 1 hectare per bolus.
Yeah.
And I didn't realise this, is that people don't have to go out and get cow horns and bury cow poo all by themselves. They can just literally buy this stuff, stir it up at home and spread it.
Yeah, you need to be a part of an organisation that make it.
Yeah. Is that costly?
No, it's not. To do with the Australian Demeter Biodynamic Group, which I'm a part of.
Yep.
You need to do an introductory course, but that's to make sure that you understand the basics of it. This is the day course.
Yep.
It's very cheap, $100.
$100 for a day.
Right? And but to get that understanding of the basics of biodynamics and the preparations and the basics on how to stir them and apply them. And there's other organisations as well. I'm not aware of their process, but you can buy specifically made preparations. You can do it yourself too.
Yep.
But I choose to buy it. I'm a part of the organisation. I'm actually part of help make it as well. So I know the quality of the preparations are the highest level, and that's important because it's the core of my soil health. So I need to make sure that the quality of my preparations is the best.
So if people want to get involved in this, I'll pop a link on the website, and they can get in contact with this $100 day course.
Yep.
And get themselves started with some 500 preparation.
Yeah, and get an understanding of it to use it effectively.
So Simon, you're using chickens for a lot of your soil health as well. And I'm actually interested in your trailer setup. How many chooks are you running at the moment?
So I've got about 220.
Yep.
Our capacity is probably 240, 250.
Yep.
Based on our laying capacity and the area for the roosting. So we've got 2 trailers.
Yep.
This is specifically for laying.
Yes.
So there's roll-away nesting boxes in there. The eggs roll out to the outside here. I'll show you in a second. I'll just lift the lid and collect the eggs.
Yep.
They enter from the centre and lay inside there.
So that trailer's just for egg laying?
Just for egg laying.
And then you've got a separate one just for roosting?
Yeah. Yeah, so there's little ramps on the side. The doors are open all the time. They can come in and out as they please because we've got the electric net. And Eddie, the guard dog, they're safe at night. Yeah, she sleeps in here with them and stays in here with them. Yeah. The reason I've done 2 is because as you'll see, our property's quite undulating, and if I had them together, it'd be quite a big trailer and quite heavy. Yeah. This allows me to get into more parts of the farm. Yeah. Also, I can keep both a bit cleaner because if they're laying inside that trailer, and when they roost, there's a lot of poo. It's just
and clean eggs are much easier to deal with and sell and everything else.
And I can clean those rollaway boxes quite easily and often, and because cleaning of the eggs takes time, and time is money. So the cleaner those eggs are when I pull them out of there, the more time I save in my packing and collection, which my time is valuable. So that, you know what I mean? How can I be efficient with every part of my system? So that there's a skid feeder at the back of the laying trailer that we put some certified supplementary feed in there, so they'll get their extra nutrient requirements through that feed. So they need a certain level of protein to maintain an egg laying capacity, and we can't provide that through the pasture.
Just through pasture alone.
So, but
you do find if the pasture improves, they go through less food.
Absolutely. So, depending on where they are on the property, and different parts of the property are at different levels of fertility and pasture nutrient value, protein value. So as soon as they go into an area that is of a higher level and a better species of pasture, their supplementary feed drops considerably, which is dollars. So supplementary feed is one of my biggest costs.
Yep.
And it's an input that comes from outside of the farm. So if I can minimise that from a cost point of view, but also from an input point of view, I'm better off. So their role in the system initially was I wanted livestock as part of our system. Yep. And I wanted their manure. Yep. So the property inherently was low in nitrogen and phosphorus.
Yes.
So
they're giving you both.
They're giving me both. So they're part of the system that they provide more than one function of just providing eggs. They're manuring, but they're also grazing too, and that's an important part too. They don't graze entirely. They've been in this paddock here for 3 days. They haven't eaten it out, and they've got access to fresh grass every 3 days. So I'll move them every 3 days without fail, sometimes 2 days.
So that's another important point too. You're leaving green matter on top of the ground. You're not grazing below a green matter subsistence. So you've still got photosynthetic activity when you move the birds on.
Exactly. So and that's one of the key activity really is the management of the pasture, my plants. Like how am I managing the pasture or my plants so that they're behaving as they would naturally? That cycle where they all feed each other, literally.
That's the holy grail.
That's the holy grail. And so how, as a farmer, do I work with that system of plants photosynthesizing and growing roots and also exuding sugars from those roots? That is a sugar source for the biology. And the dying roots, once the pasture's been grazed off, provides organic matter for the biology. And they in turn, through the sugars and the moisture and the air created by the plant roots, create humus, and the plants feed off the humus and they grow, and the cycle continues. I'm putting humus in the bank for them when I grow my annual crops, which you'll see. They are grown on that humus.
So it sounds to me, Simon, like I need to get some chooks at home if I want to improve the soil. Is that your take on this?
That's part of it. And it doesn't have to be 250 chickens. I've chosen to do 250 chickens because of the scale. Yes. As in the area I need to cover and want to cover. And also, if I'm going to move them every day, I might as well have 250 because. But you could have this in a backyard setup and have a smaller hand movable trailer. Could be 10, 20, 30 chickens. The principle's the same. And it also gives my business a bit of resilience because I've got another enterprise. So if something happens, if I have a hailstorm and lose my nashi crop, I've got income from the chickens. So it's all these different levels, which makes it a little bit complicated. It's another thing to think about and run, but that's a part of a diverse, resilient system is diversity.
So part of your whole approach, Simon, is not overusing the land as well. So you tend to give your soil a rest, is that correct?
Yeah, so with our annual strawberry crop, we give the ground a 12-month break. So this was last year's strawberries were in here under this netted area.
Yep.
And this is where the chickens come in. We finished picking in late April, and we just let the chickens in, put the trailer and everything in there, and move it along.
They clean up all the waste strawberries.
Yeah, they clean up all the waste berry plant. They'll chew all the leaf off the plant, the waste berries. They'll scratch through the straw. We use mulch as instead of black plastic or even weed mat. Mm-hmm. So there's plenty of grubs, and there's a lot of protein in there for them. So they're spreading that mulch, scratching, pooing, and then we'll come in and carefully cultivate. We still cultivate. We're trying to minimise as much as possible.
But we were talking about that cultivation, and you tend to use sort of older techniques of cultivation, I suppose,
more
don't you?
gentler. Yeah. So I'm trying to break open the soil.
Not pulverise it.
Yeah, I don't need. I'm creating structure with the soil through my plants, and I don't want to necessarily go and damage that. I mean, every time you cultivate, there's going to be a setback. There's no doubt about that. But if I can time it correctly,
can you talk me through from this, which it's nearly head height?
Yeah.
Can you talk me through what your process is?
Yeah. So that's a combination of cereal, rye, peas, vetch, and some faba beans that I bought seed in from to plant, but also the gaps are being filled with whatever seeds there. So whatever's grown is grown, which is what I want. In the process of that growing, there's soil development beneath. It's very close. I'm just waiting for it to dry up a little bit, but I'll mulch that. We've got an out front flail mulcher for our mower, and chop that up nice and fine, and then I'll incorporate that into the ground. So using a single ripper and a chisel plough, and it doesn't 100% incorporate it, but it's enough for that organic matter to then be broken down into humus. This was a winter green manure, so I won't be planting in here till winter next year. So I've still got summer to grow another green manure. So I'll plant a millet and peas or buckwheat or something like that to, again, keep further developing that soil and putting humus in the bank. So that when I come in here next winter, I'll plant my strawberries and they will feed off that humus.
And it's also important to note, as part of an IPM cycle, you're breaking any pest and disease development and growth in there so that you don't have as heavy a pest and disease pressure as someone who's maybe growing strawberries for 2 or 3 years in place.
Yeah, exactly. And there's habitat in there for our other strawberry crop, which is just across the road. So it's about providing habitat as much as breaking a cycle too. And back onto the chickens in regards to, say, worms, by moving them regularly to new fresh pasture, that's helping break that worm parasite cycle as well. You might go, geez, moving them every 2 or 3 days, that sounds like a lot of work. Yeah. I've got my system down to put up the next fence, pull the other one down very quickly. It takes me an hour and a half to move them.
So an hour and a half every 3 days in a commercial system for something that's giving you a return is not excessive labour.
Yeah, and then I've got to collect the eggs, I've got to pack the eggs, I've got to clean and do certain things but it's not, I've worked out my time.
Yep.
I've worked out my cost of my time.
Yep.
And I've calculated that in, and I've calculated all my other input costs, and I know my output, so I know where I sit with it, and it's profitable, including my time, because it's important. A lot of farmers don't include their time.
Yes.
You need to do that. And I've time and motion study, I suppose you call it.
Yep.
Like I've recorded how long it takes to do everything. And I'm doing that for each enterprise on the farm to see what's effective, what's viable, and then how can I adjust what I'm doing to make it more efficient. And sometimes things just are as they are, and that's how they are. But looking at the systems and how they operate, and how can I work with the natural systems we're trying to work with, but from a efficiency point of view, work that out as well.
So it's not all just about the vibe. There's a business in here as well. You've got to support your family, and you're doing that.
It's very much that. And also, for smaller farms, it's only 20 acres, 21 acres. It's intense, and that's why I've chosen particular enterprises as well for their return per area, and also that they're suited to this climate, this site. And we took time to work that out when we got here. We were here for a few years before we started this business, and I was able to observe the climate and what was going on and what might work in certain places, and also observe what grows easily.
Yes.
What is easier to manage.
What you don't have to force.
Yeah. And some things are, the berries are intense, but we're developing that system to work with ways of making that easier.
All right, Simon, so this is your other setup that you've got just over the road, as it were, from where we were. And we've got an interesting transition here. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah, so this again was strawberries last year, and we finished this block a bit later than the one you just saw. So we planted a green manure as well in here, but it was planted later, so it hasn't grown as high. But also from some of the straw that we put in here, there was a bit of ryegrass seed in it, so that's grown as well. But the chickens have come through towards us about a week ago, and they're doing a big loop around, and they're going to come back down and go through this green manure crop here. It's sort of the height where they can actually graze a bit of it. The one you just saw is probably a bit far gone for them to graze, but they'll graze that, and I'll weigh up whether I want to cultivate that and plant another crop, or let that ryegrass come back and grow again and develop that humus. So there's been a bit of nitrogen and phosphorus and a few other minerals through the manure and I'll get another bit of growth out of that, and their growth and their dynamic management to build humus. That's my goal. Like strawberries will go in here next year, and the plant food is there for them to feed on to grow through their life cycle. So the biology helps put the minerals required out of the soil, inherent soil and based rock, and also through remineralisation of the plants. And if we feel we need to, we can use some rock minerals during this green manuring process to get the extra minerals required for plant growth in the humus. And they're in a water-soluble form in that humus, so they're available to plants. And the sunlight will dictate how they feed. That's sort of the way we're going. So they'll take what they need out of that humus.
So, Simon, people might say, oh, it's a real waste of land, like it's really inefficient land use if you're leaving this fallow for a whole year. But the reality is you're turning this into another profitable enterprise, which is eggs.
Yeah, exactly.
So you are actually you're turning your green manure crop not only into soil humus, but you're turning it into a saleable product.
Yeah, exactly. In a way, the green manure and the humus formation is probably as important, if not more important, than the actual crop. Does that make sense? So in growing that crop, it allows me to grow my crops at a very low input cost and material. That's the key.
So down the hill here, we have your next rotation, which is actually a fruit crop, and you've got some strawberries in the ground here. Now, my strawberry growing friends would have a heart attack.
Yes.
There is nothing here to stop weeds. There's no mulch to heat up the soil.
No.
You're overhead irrigating. You're breaking just about every single rule of modern strawberry growing that you could possibly break.
Yep.
Can you explain to me why you would choose to grow strawberries in a way that means you have to actually hand hoe them?
Well, we do that at the start, like it's not all season. So at this particular stage, we're going through and lightly hand weeding. It does take time and energy, but if we do it regularly at this point of the year, it's manageable. But what I'm wanting to do is I want the sun to warm the soil to get the plants going. As a certified grower, we can't actually use plastic mulch or a woven weed mat as a Demeter grower. The mulch material has to be a natural source. Also, at the end of the season, I have to pull up the plastic and get rid of it. When I have to pull up the weed mat and get rid of it, I can just let the chickens in what the mulch that I put. So what we'll do is hand cultivate this probably for another month maybe, and as that first hand of fruit's about to hit the deck, we've bought in some barley straw, some biodynamic barley straw, and we will spread that through the walkways and everywhere. So this whole patch will be beautiful barley straw with the strawberry plants going through it. So the weed competition is nullified. We'll have to hand weed here and there, but there's airflow through the mulch, but and the fruit will sit on the mulch and not on the soil, so it protects the fruit. You don't have to clean the fruit. Yes, there'll be some slug action, and there'll be a few other things, but it's a natural input. It's a natural part of it. That mulch then gets incorporated into the soil, and it's extra carbon at the end of the season to add to the organic matter for the next crop. Does that make sense? So that mulch, that input, does have another function. So I'm looking at each input and each part of the system, and how can I get more than one function out of it. So
you've got nashi fruit as well, and this was on the property, and it was absolutely covered in blackberries when you came into it, Simon.
Yeah.
Now you're saying the blue forget-me-nots underneath the trees are actually really good for you?
Yeah, the bees love them.
Yeah, right.
They're another source of nectar and for the bees and attracting bees.
Yep.
They will die off in summer.
Yep.
And we graze the chickens through here in winter.
Yep.
Autumn and winter. So they control a bit of growth At that time, there's not much growth then anyway. But
soil doesn't go bare, but it does go down.
Never bare. That's the other thing.
Never bare.
Never bare unless, and even the strawberries are only just for a little bit.
Yeah.
Never bare in here. No irrigation. These were neglected.
Right. No irrigation at all.
No, these have been neglected for a long time, so their roots have gone down deep. And so they've established... even through the dry summer...
Okay, so you've got a lot of what we would call weeds growing in here.
Yep.
And you're not concerned by any of those being a habitat for pests?
No, I see them as a habitat for beneficials.
Okay.
So
because you've got other weeds that also have beneficials in there, so you've got a whole life cycle happening in here.
Yeah. So I'll let it grow through spring, early summer, and provide that habitat. And then as it tends to dry down in summer, I'll mulch it and brush cut it and lay that mulch down on the ground and cover any bare areas again. So
once again, you time it with the season. As it starts to dry out, that's when you do it?
Because then because they're competing for moisture and humus.
Yep.
But I know through experience that this little block of 100 trees can produce a lot of fruit.
What about waste-wise? One of the things that people say is, biodynamic farming, organic farming, heaps of waste. That's why they charge so much for their product, etc., etc., etc. What you measure everything. What do you find your waste tends to be?
Strawberries was minimal. When I say waste, seconds I can still use. We value out our seconds and get return.
Right. So you do jams and things like that.
Oh, we cut and freeze the seconds and we make a sorbet out of it.
Okay.
That's a beauty.
Cool.
But there is waste. There's rotten fruit that you can't... But it was minimal. It was, I don't know, 2 years ago it was sort of the 10-15%, if that. Mm-hmm. That's tolerable.
And you don't have trouble with coddling moth with your nashies?
We have some coddling moth. There's a bit of damage. But again, we picked over 1.5 tonnes off here of saleable fruit.
Yep.
And I didn't measure it, but there was a bit of waste from the coddling moth.
Yep.
But it didn't affect our bottom line.
But it's not a 50% waste by any measure.
No. Right. And that fruit was taken out and fed to the chickens.
Right.
So, the hygiene, it's all, we don't just do nothing.
Yeah.
It's kind of, might sound a bit like it. It's minimal, but it's calculated. It's managing the hygiene, removing, if there's any larvae and things. The chickens come in here, if there's any larvae, that it's trying to minimise the impact. But it's trying to also use the system to advantage. So, like I said, it's a low input system. So if I get a bit of damage, I'm not...
You haven't paid a lot.
If financially it was affecting me, then I'd have to look at the system and go, well, this isn't working.
Yeah.
But as it is, it's working.
Well, Simon, I think you've inspired me, and you've probably inspired a few of the viewers today. I think first step is probably for me to get my head around this 500, 501 stuff. I don't think I'll ever go to the extent of dancing around a cauldron at night under the full moon.
That's okay.
But I can see some real practical applications of what you're doing here to nurture your soil and nurture your plants.
Yeah.
And I really want to thank you for spending the time with us today to go through what you're doing and look at the natural sequence that you're using. And I think I've got to go get myself some chickens and set up a really good chicken tractor so that I can lower my workload.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll go for it. It's doable. Yeah. And that's the thing about this is you can scale it down, you can scale it up.
Yep.
You've got to have the right systems. You've got to work on your systems. But as a operating business, farming this way, I feel we can be carbon neutral, if not carbon positive. Pulling carbon dioxide out of the air and storing it in the soil. It's as simple as that. If 1% increase in soil carbon over an acre attributes to about 8 tonnes of carbon being pulled out of the... So
there you go. You can drive your car all year as long as you look after your soil.
Well, you can offset it. And it's as simple as that.
Good on you, mate.
Good on you, Tim.
All right, thanks for your time today. It's been wonderful. And don't forget, guys, if you like this sort of stuff, hit the little subscribe button, give it a thumbs up, and check out more information on timthompson.ag, including links to how you can do a one-day Demeter biodynamic course and start using that wonderful cow poo. And it's only $1.50 a thing.
An acre.
Wow.
Yeah.
$1.50 an acre. Cheapest fertiliser I've ever seen.
Yeah.